Desperation drove Delilah Mason to the edge of town that fateful evening in 1876, her trembling hands clutching her shawl against the biting autumn wind of Placerville, California. 5 months pregnant and not a penny to her name, she waited near the crossroads where miners and travelers passed, preparing to sell the only thing she had left herself. The gold rush that had transformed this Sierra Nevada foothill town into a bustling center of commerce had long since peaked. Those who struck it rich had either moved on or established themselves as the town's elite. Those who hadn't, like Delilah, lived in the shadows, desperate and forgotten. Delilah's stomach growled painfully as she leaned against a pine tree. 3 days without a proper meal had left her weak, dizzy, and terrified for the child growing inside her. Her late husband's mining claim had produced nothing but debt before pneumonia took him 2 months ago. The landlord had evicted her last week, and the shopkeepers in town had stopped extending credit. She spotted a rider approaching from the east, the silhouette growing larger against the setting sun. Delilah straightened her posture, trying to smooth the wrinkles from her faded dress. As the horse drew closer, she could make out the broad shoulders of a man, his face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The stranger slowed his horse as he approached, and Delilah stepped forward, swallowing her pride. "Evening, sir," she said, her voice barely audible above the rustling leaves. Might you be looking for company tonight?" The rider halted his horse completely, studying her from atop his mount. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 30, with a strong jawline softened by kind eyes the color of aged whiskey. His clothes were dusty from the trail but well-made, not a prospector or miner, but not wealthy enough to be one of the mine owners either. "Madam?" he questioned, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair. Delilah's cheeks burned with shame. I can offer you comfort for the night." "For a fair price." The man's eyes widened slightly, then traveled to her swollen belly, visible even beneath her shawl. Something in his expression shifted, not disgust or judgment as she'd feared, but something deeper, more complex. "When's the last time you ate, madam?" he asked quietly. The unexpected question brought stinging tears to Delilah's eyes. "Yesterday morning," she admitted, "just some stale bread." Without another word, the man dismounted, his movements fluid and practiced. Standing before her, she could see he was tall and broad-shouldered, his face weathered by sun and wind. "My name is Owen Xavier," he said, extending a calloused hand, "and I'd be honored to buy you supper if you join me." Delilah hesitated, uncertain if this was some cruel joke. "I don't accept charity, Mr. Xavier." "It's not charity," he replied. "It's human decency, and please call me Owen." Something in his steady gaze convinced Delilah to accept his outstretched hand. "Delilah Mason," she said softly. Owen led her toward town, walking alongside her while guiding his horse by the reins. "I just arrived in Placerville," he explained, "looking for work at the larger operations. I was a foreman at a silver mine in Nevada before it played out." "There's still work here," Delilah said, struggling to keep pace. "The Empire Mine is hiring experienced men." Owen nodded. "That's what I heard. Planning to inquire tomorrow." He glanced at her. "You know much about the mining operations here?" "My husband worked claims for 5 years before he passed. Picked up enough to understand the business, though it never did us much good." They reached the edge of town where lanterns were being lit along the main street. Delilah grew uneasy as they approached the busier section of Placerville. People knew her situation. The shame of being seen with a strange man would only confirm the whispers that had already begun. As if sensing her discomfort, Owen stopped. "Is there somewhere quieter we might get a meal? I'm not one for crowds after a long ride." Relief washed over her. "Widow Harmon runs a small kitchen behind the apothecary. She serves decent food without much fuss." Owen nodded and changed direction, following her guidance through a narrow alley to a small building with a single lantern hanging by the door. Inside, the room was warm and smelled of fresh bread and stew. Only 2 other tables were occupied, and the widow herself bustled between them. "Delilah," the older woman said, her surprise evident, "been a while since you've come by." "Evening, Mrs. Harmon," Delilah replied softly. "This is Mr. Xavier. He's just arrived in town." The widow's eyes darted between them, lingering on Delilah's condition before settling on Owen with unmistakable suspicion. "We'd like 2 bowls of whatever's hot, if you please," Owen said, placing coins on the table, "and some bread, Mrs." Harmon pocketed the money with a nod and disappeared into the kitchen. "People are protective of you," Owen observed once they were seated. Delilah sighed. "People are judgmental. James, my husband, was well liked here. Since his passing, I've become an object of pity at best, scorn at worst." She placed a protective hand over her belly. "Especially in my condition." Owen's expression remained neutral. "Folks are quick to judge what they don't understand." The food arrived, thick venison stew with vegetables and fresh bread still warm from the oven. Delilah tried to eat slowly, to maintain some dignity, but hunger overcame her manners. Owen said nothing, simply breaking his bread and eating his own meal without rushing. When she'd scraped her bowl clean, Owen pushed his half-eaten portion toward her. "I'm not as hungry as I thought," he said. Delilah wanted to refuse, but the baby kicked as if in protest. She accepted the second helping with murmured thanks. "How far along are you?" Owen asked after a comfortable silence had settled between them. 5 months, give or take," Delilah answered. "James passed before he knew." Pneumonia took him quickly. Owen nodded solemnly. "I'm sorry for your loss, thank you." She studied him, trying to understand his intentions. "Mr. Xavier, you've been kind, but I need to ask, what do you want from me?" Owen leaned back in his chair, his eyes steady on hers. "I want to make you a proposition, Mrs. Mason, not the kind you were offering at the crossroads." Delilah tensed. "What kind, then?" "A marriage of convenience." The words hung in the air between them. Delilah stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Pardon me." "I'm proposing marriage," Owen repeated calmly. "You need security for yourself and your child. Well, I've been alone too long." Delilah nearly laughed at the absurdity. "You can't be serious. You don't know me, I don't know you, and I'm carrying another man's child." "I know you're a woman of character who's fallen on hard times," Owen said. "I know you were willing to sacrifice your dignity to feed your baby. That tells me enough about your character." "And what do I know about yours?" she challenged. "For all I know, you could be worse than starvation." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Fair point. I'm 31 years old. I've worked honest jobs since I was 14. I don't drink to excess. I've never struck a woman. I attend church when there's one available. I have savings enough to establish us comfortably." Delilah shook her head in disbelief. "Why? Why would you tie yourself to a pregnant widow you met on the road?" Owen's expression sobered. "Because 7 years ago, my sister was in a similar position. Her husband died in a mining accident in Colorado, leaving her with a baby on the way and nowhere to turn. No one helped her." He paused, pain evident in his eyes. "She and the baby didn't survive the winter." Understanding dawned on Delilah. "So I'm your charity case, your way of making amends." "No," Owen said firmly. "You're a woman who deserves better than what fate has dealt you. I'm a man who can offer that better chance. We both gain something. You get security, I get." He hesitated. "What?" Delilah pressed. "A purpose. A family." He looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. "I've spent too many years drifting from one mining camp to another. It's a lonely existence." Delilah studied him, trying to find deception in his features and finding none. "This is madness," she finally said. "We can't simply decide to marry." "People do it all the time out here," Owen countered. "Marriages of convenience become real partnerships, sometimes even more. And if it doesn't, if you come to resent me and the child, then we'll part ways and I'll ensure you're provided for." He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. "All I'm asking is that you consider it. I'll be staying at the boarding house near the livery. I plan to inquire about work tomorrow. Take tonight to think on my offer." Delilah felt overwhelmed. The full stomach and the warmth of the room had made her drowsy, less sharp than she needed to be for such a momentous decision. "Where will you go tonight?" Owen asked gently. The question brought reality crashing back. She had nowhere to go. The last of her money had gone toward a single night at her rundown boarding house 3 days ago. "I'll manage," she said with more conviction than she felt. Owen's eyes reflected his disbelief. "Mrs. Harmon," he called to the widow, who appeared from the kitchen. "Does your establishment offer rooms for the night?" "It does for respectable folk," the woman answered cautiously. Owen placed more coins on the table. Mrs. Mason requires lodging. I'll be at Simmons' boarding house if she needs anything. Mrs. Harmon collected the money with narrowed eyes. And what's your business with Delilah, if I might ask? We're discussing a potential arrangement, Owen replied evenly, one that would solve her current difficulties. The widow looked to Delilah for confirmation. It's all right, Mrs. Harmon, Delilah assured her. Mr. Xavier has been a gentleman. After the older woman retreated, Owen rose from his seat. Think on my offer, Mrs. Mason. I'll call on you tomorrow afternoon. As he turned to leave, Delilah found her voice. Mr. Xavier, why me? Surely there are other women, unencumbered women, who would accept your proposal. Owen paused at the door. Perhaps, but I wasn't led to them tonight. With a tip of his hat, he was gone, leaving Delilah alone with a full stomach and a decision that would alter the course of her life forever. Delilah barely slept that night, despite the comfort of her real bed. Mrs. Harmon had given her a small room above the kitchen, warm from the lingering heat of the stoves below. As she lay awake, one hand resting on her growing belly, she weighed Owen Xavier's extraordinary proposition. Marriage to a stranger seemed preposterous, yet what alternatives did she have? She could continue trying to find work, but no one would hire a woman in her condition. She could return to the crossroads, selling herself to survive, but the thought made her physically ill. She could seek charity from the church, but pride and shame had kept her from that door thus far. By morning, exhaustion had brought a strange clarity. When Mrs. Harmon brought up a tray with porridge and tea, Delilah had reached her decision. Your gentleman caller paid for your meals today as well, the widow said, settling the tray across Delilah's lap. He's not my caller, Delilah corrected automatically. She hesitated, uncertain how to explain. Mrs. Harmon sat on the edge of the bed. Delilah Mason, I've known you since you arrived in Placerville as a bright-eyed new bride. You're a good woman who's had more than her share of hardship. Now tell me true, what does this man want with you? Delilah met the older woman's concerned gaze. He's offered marriage. The widow's eyebrows shot up. Marriage to a man you just met? Have you lost your senses? Perhaps I have, Delilah admitted. But what choice do I have, Mrs. Harmon? I have no money, no home, no prospects. This child will come whether I'm prepared or not. Mrs. Harmon's expression softened. There are other options. The church, the same church where Mrs. Patterson suggested I give up my baby once it's born. Where Reverend Michaels spoke of my unfortunate situation as if my child is a burden rather than a blessing. Delilah shook her head. I won't be separated from my baby. And you believe this stranger will treat another man's child as his own? He says he will. Delilah stirred her porridge. He seems sincere. Mrs. Harmon sighed heavily. Men are always sincere until they get what they want. What do you really know about him? Very little, Delilah admitted. But I know what awaits me without his help, and it's far worse than taking a chance on his character. The widow studied her for a long moment. If you're determined on this course, at least let me make some inquiries. Placerville may be growing, but word travels. Someone might know something of this Owen Xavier. Delilah nodded gratefully. Thank you. After breakfast, Delilah washed with the warm water Mrs. Harmon provided and did her best to make herself presentable. Her clothes were worn but clean, and she arranged her dark hair as neatly as possible. If she was to meet Owen and give him her answer, she wanted to maintain whatever dignity remained to her. Around midday, Mrs. Harmon returned with news. Your Mr. Xavier has been making inquiries at the Empire Mine, she reported. Foreman there recognized him from Nevada. Says he's got a reputation as a fair-minded supervisor who knows his business. No talk of drinking or gambling problems. Relief flooded through Delilah. That's something, at least. He's also been to see Reverend Michaels, Mrs. Harmon added with a meaningful look. Discussing marriage requirements, I'd wager. Delilah's heart quickened. He truly was serious about his offer. By early afternoon, a knock came at the door downstairs. Delilah heard Mrs. Harmon's voice, then heavy footsteps on the stairs. Owen appeared in the doorway of her small room, hat in hand, his clothes fresher than the previous evening. Mrs. Mason, he greeted her with a slight bow. I hope you rested well. I did, thank you, she replied, gesturing to the room's single chair while she perched on the edge of the bed. Mrs. Harmon tells me you visited the Empire Mine today. Owen nodded, taking the seat. They've offered me a position as shift foreman. The pay is good, steady work. I can start next week. Congratulations, Delilah said, genuinely pleased for him. Placerville has been good to those with mining experience. It seems a decent town, Owen agreed. I've secured lodging, a small house on Cedar Street, 2 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, nothing fancy but solid. Delilah's breath caught. He was already making arrangements, confident in her acceptance. Part of her bristled at his presumption, yet another part was impressed by his efficiency. You're very sure of yourself, Mr. Xavier. A faint smile touched his lips. Not sure of your answer, Mrs. Mason. Just prepared for the possibility. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Have you considered my proposition? Delilah met his gaze steadily. I have, and before I give you my answer, I need to understand exactly what you're proposing. What would this marriage entail? What would you expect of me? Owen nodded, as if appreciating her directness. I propose a legal marriage with all the protections that provides for you and your child. I would expect you to maintain our home and care for the child as any wife would. In return, I would provide financial security and protection. And the marital aspects? Delilah asked, her cheeks warming despite her determination to speak plainly. Owen's expression remained composed, though a faint color appeared high on his cheekbones. I would hope that in time we might develop genuine affection. Until then, I would never force attentions where they weren't welcomed. Delilah studied him, searching for deception and finding none. And my child, would you acknowledge it as yours? To the world, yes. The child would bear my name and be raised as my own. Even though every person in town knows I was widowed 5 months ago, Owen shrugged. People talk, let them. We'll know the truth of our arrangement. Delilah took a deep breath. If I agree, I want something written. A contract stating that if you ever wish to dissolve our marriage, you'll provide for me and the child. Surprise flickered across Owen's features, followed by respect. You're a practical woman, Mrs. Mason. I admire that. I agree to your terms. Delilah nodded slowly. Then yes, Mr. Xavier. I accept your proposal, Owen exhaled as if he'd been holding his breath. I'm glad to hear it. He reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a small object. I took the liberty of purchasing this in case you accepted. He held out a simple gold band, not new, Delilah noticed, but well cared for. It was my mother's, Owen explained. She passed it to me years ago, hoping I'd find use for it someday. The gesture touched Delilah unexpectedly. This wasn't the impersonal business arrangement she'd anticipated. Owen was offering something personal, a connection to his past. It's beautiful, she said softly, allowing him to slip it onto her finger. It was slightly loose but would serve. I've spoken with Reverend Michaels, Owen continued. He can perform the ceremony tomorrow if that suits you. So soon. I see no reason to wait. The house is available immediately, and it would be best for you to be settled before. He glanced at her belly. Delilah nodded in understanding. Tomorrow, then. Owen stood, replacing his hat. I'll call for you at 10. The Reverend can see us at 11. As he turned to leave, Delilah called after him, Mr. Xavier Owen. Thank you. He paused in the doorway. Don't thank me yet, Mrs. Mason. We have a long road ahead. After he departed, Mrs. Harmon appeared with a knowing look. So you've decided? I have, Delilah confirmed. We'll marry tomorrow, the widow sighed. It's happening mighty fast. Fast is what I need right now, Delilah replied, her hand drifting to her stomach. This child won't wait for propriety or perfect circumstances. Mrs. Harmon nodded reluctantly. Well then, we'd better see about making you presentable for your wedding day. The following morning dawned clear and cool, typical for October in Placerville. Mrs. Harmon had worked minor miracles, altering one of her own dresses to accommodate Delilah's pregnancy. The pale blue fabric wasn't traditional for a wedding, but it brought out the deep blue of Delilah's eyes and complemented her dark hair, which Mrs. Harmon had arranged with fresh flowers. You look lovely, the widow pronounced, stepping back to survey her work. Not like a woman marrying a virtual stranger at all. Delilah managed a small smile. That's a comfort. Are you certain about this? Mrs. Harmon asked one final time. Once done, it can't be easily undone. I'm certain it's better than the alternative, Delilah answered honestly. Owen seems decent. The rest we'll have to discover with time. A knock at the door signaled Owen's arrival. Mrs. Harmon went to admit him while Delilah took a final moment to compose herself. This was not how she had imagined her life would unfold. She had loved James deeply, had planned a future with children who would know their father. Now she was binding herself to a stranger, hoping his character matched his promises. When she descended the stairs, Owen stood waiting, dressed in a clean black suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. He'd trimmed his beard and combed his sandy hair, and for the first time Delilah noticed how handsome he was. The thought caught her by surprise. Owen's eyes widened slightly at her appearance. "Mrs. Mason," he said, his voice lower than usual, "you look beautiful." "Thank you," she replied, unexpectedly flustered by the sincerity in his voice. "You're quite presentable yourself." Mrs. Harmon bustled around them, fussing with Delilah's shawl. "Now remember what we discussed, Mr. Xavier. Delilah is to have absolute rest this afternoon. The excitement isn't good for her condition." "Yes, madam," Owen replied solemnly. "I'll see that she's comfortable." The church was only a short walk away, a modest wooden structure with a small bell tower. Reverend Michaels was waiting for them, along with 2 witnesses, the church secretary and, to Delilah's surprise, the foreman from the Empire Mine. "Thought you might want someone from your new workplace to witness the occasion," Owen explained. "Mr. Donovan has been kind enough to oblige." The ceremony itself was brief and straightforward. Reverend Michaels, who had initially regarded their hasty marriage with suspicion, seemed to warm to Owen during the proceedings. When it came time for the vows, Owen spoke his with clear conviction. Delilah, despite her practical approach to this arrangement, found herself moved by the ancient promises. "I, Delilah Mason, take thee, Owen Xavier, to be my wedded husband." The words felt weighty in her mouth, laden with meaning despite the unusual circumstances. When Owen slipped the gold band onto her finger again, this time with the blessing of the church, Delilah felt an unexpected surge of emotion. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Michaels declared. "You may kiss your bride." Delilah hadn't considered this part of the ceremony. She glanced up at Owen, uncertain. His eyes asked a silent question, and she gave an almost imperceptible nod. He leaned down and placed a gentle, chaste kiss upon her lips, brief but warm. It was the first time a man other than James had kissed her in 6 years. After signing the marriage certificate and accepting congratulations from the witnesses, Owen offered Delilah his arm. "Shall we see our home, Mrs. Xavier?" The new name startled her. "Yes," she managed, taking his arm. "I'd like that." The house on Cedar Street was indeed small but solidly built. Set back from the road with a few pine trees providing shade, it had a front porch with a swing and neat steps leading to a freshly painted door. Owen produced a key from his pocket and handed it to Delilah. "Your house, your key," he said simply. Delilah unlocked the door with slightly trembling hands. Inside, the main room served as both parlor and dining area, with a cast-iron stove for cooking and heating. Simple but sturdy furniture filled the space: a table with 4 chairs, a sofa covered in faded but clean fabric, a rocking chair placed near the window. Mr. Donovan's wife selected some essentials, Owen explained, following her inside. "Linens, cookware, basic provisions." "I wasn't certain what else you might need." Delilah moved through the house, taking in each detail. A kitchen area with shelves stocked with flour, sugar, coffee, and dried goods. A bedroom with a large bed already made up with fresh sheets. A smaller room beside it, currently empty but perfect for a nursery. A washroom with an actual copper tub, a luxury she hadn't expected. "It's wonderful," she said honestly, turning to face Owen. "Better than I dared hope." Relief crossed his features. "I'm glad it meets with your approval." The previous occupant was transferred to San Francisco. "His loss is our gain." The phrase "our gain" hung in the air between them, emphasizing their new shared life. An awkward silence descended as they both realized they were now alone, married in their home. "You must be tired," Owen said finally. "Mrs. Harmon was most insistent about your rest." Delilah nodded, grateful for his understanding. "The excitement has been a bit much." I'll prepare some tea while you settle in, he offered. The bedroom is yours, of course. I've arranged to sleep here. He gestured to the sofa. That won't be comfortable, Delilah protested. The bed is large enough that we could, she stopped, flushing at the implication. That's generous of you, Owen said carefully, but I think separate arrangements are best for now, until we know each other better. His consideration both relieved and, oddly, disappointed her. As you wish. While Owen busied himself with the kettle, Delilah retreated to the bedroom to change into more comfortable attire. She unpacked the small bundle of possessions Mrs. Harmon had helped her collect from her former landlord nightclothes, a hairbrush, a daguerreotype of her parents, and a small wooden box containing James's pocket watch and wedding ring. As she placed these treasured items on the bedside table, the reality of her situation struck her anew. She had married a stranger. She was carrying one man's child while bearing another man's name. What kind of life had she created for herself and her baby? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Tea's ready, Owen called, and there's bread and preserves if you're hungry. Thank you. I'll be right out, Delilah replied, hastily drying her eyes. Whatever doubts she had, they must be put aside. This was her life now, and she would make the best of it for her child's sake. The days that followed established a tentative routine. Owen left early each morning for the mine, returning in the late afternoon covered in dust, but never complaining. Delilah focused on making the house truly habitable, adding small touches to transform it from a bachelor's quarters to a family home. She discovered Owen had arranged credit for her at the general store, allowing her to purchase fabric for curtains, additional cooking supplies, and materials to begin crafting items for the baby. They were careful with each other, unfailingly polite, sharing meals and conversation but maintaining a respectful distance. Owen continued to sleep on the sofa despite Delilah's occasional hints that such an arrangement wasn't necessary. At night, she would sometimes hear him moving about restlessly, and guilt would twist in her chest at his discomfort. A week into their marriage, Delilah was preparing supper when Owen arrived home earlier than usual. Something smells wonderful, he said, hanging his hat by the door. Delilah smiled, pleased by his appreciation. Beef stew with dumplings. Mrs. Donovan shared her recipe. You've been visiting with the Donovans? Owen asked, washing his hands at the basin. Mrs. Donovan called yesterday. She's been quite welcoming. Delilah stirred the pot, adding a pinch more salt. She invited us to dinner next Saturday. Owen nodded, drying his hands on a towel. That's kind of her. How are you feeling today? The question was part of their daily ritual, his gentle inquiry about her health, her reassurance that all was well. Today, however, Delilah decided on honesty. My back aches terribly, she admitted, and I'm exhausted despite doing very little. Concern crossed Owen's features. You should rest more. The house can wait. It helps to stay busy, Delilah insisted. Keeps my mind occupied. Occupied from what? Delilah hesitated, then decided that if they were to build any kind of partnership, honesty was essential. From worry, fear, wondering if I've made a terrible mistake. Owen's expression softened, having second thoughts about our arrangement. Not about the arrangement itself, Delilah clarified, returning her attention to the stew. More about my ability to uphold my end of it. What if I'm a terrible mother? What if I can't make this house a proper home? What if you come to regret your generosity? Owen was quiet for a moment, considering her words. My father used to say that worry is like paying interest on a debt you may never owe. He moved to stand beside her at the stove. You're already making this a home, Delilah. As for motherhood, I've never seen a woman more determined to protect her child. That seems a good start to me. His use of her first name, something he rarely did, caught her attention. She looked up to find him watching her with unexpected warmth. And your generosity? She asked softly. Will you regret that? I don't consider basic human decency to be generosity, Owen replied. And no, I don't regret our arrangement. In fact, he paused, seeming to search for words. These past days have been the most settled I've felt in years. The admission surprised her, truly. Owen nodded. Returning to a home with good food cooking and someone to talk with, it's more than I've had since I left my family's farm at 17. Delilah felt a blush warm her cheeks at his praise. Well, I'm glad to hear it. She returned her attention to the stew, suddenly flustered. "Supper will be ready soon. Perhaps you'd like to wash up properly." "Yes, madam," he replied with a small smile, heading toward the washroom. That evening after supper, as Delilah sat in the rocking chair mending one of Owen's shirts, he cleared his throat. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "A gift of sorts." Delilah set aside her sewing. "A gift? What's the occasion?" "No occasion, just saw it and thought you might like it." He handed her a small paper-wrapped package. Delilah opened it carefully to reveal a delicate silver hairpin with a small pearl at its end. "Owen, it's beautiful," she breathed, running her finger along the smooth surface. "But this must have cost. My first week's wages came in," he interrupted. "I wanted to mark the occasion." "Thank you," she said, genuinely moved by the thoughtful gesture. "I'll treasure it." Owen nodded, seemingly pleased by her reaction. "I noticed your hair keeps falling in your eyes when you work. Thought it might be useful as well as pretty." The fact that he had noticed such a detail touched Delilah deeply. It suggested he was paying attention to her in ways she hadn't realized. "Would you like to try it?" Owen asked, gesturing to her hair, which was indeed falling loose from its pins. Delilah nodded, handing him the hairpin. Owen stepped behind her chair, his movements tentative as he gathered a strand of her dark hair and carefully secured it with the pin. His fingers brushed against her neck, sending an unexpected shiver down her spine. "There," he said, his voice oddly rough. "Suits you." When he moved to face her again, something had shifted in the air between them. Delilah found herself noticing the flecks of green in his amber eyes, the way his beard framed his strong jawline, the breadth of his shoulders beneath his simple shirt. "I should turn in," Owen said abruptly, breaking the moment. "Early start tomorrow." "Of course," Delilah replied, flustered by her own reaction to his proximity. "Good night, Owen." "Good night, Delilah." He hesitated, then added, "Dream sweetly." As she lay in bed that night, Delilah touched the hairpin, replaying the moment of its placement. For the first time since James's death, she found herself thinking of a man other than her late husband in a way that wasn't purely practical. The realization brought both guilt and a strange, fluttering hope. November arrived, bringing colder weather to Placerville. The mountains surrounding the town wore a dusting of early snow, and the mornings dawned crisp and bright. Delilah's pregnancy advanced into its 6th month, her belly now prominently rounded, her movements increasingly cumbersome. Owen had proven himself a considerate husband in all practical matters. He brought home his wages promptly, never questioned her management of the household funds, and had begun working on furnishings for the nursery in his spare time. A beautifully crafted cradle now sat in the small room, awaiting its occupant. They had also begun to develop a genuine companionship. Their evening conversations extended longer, ranging from childhood memories to opinions on everything from politics to proper pie crust. Delilah discovered that Owen was well-read despite limited formal education, with a quick mind and dry humor that often surprised laughter from her. Yet physical intimacy remained a carefully avoided subject. Owen maintained his position on the sofa despite the increasingly cold nights, and while their casual touches had grown more frequent, a hand at the small of her back, fingers brushing while passing dishes, they never spoke of the deeper aspects of marriage. One evening in mid-November, Delilah sat struggling to reach her swollen feet to remove her shoes. After watching her contort awkwardly for several moments, Owen set aside his newspaper. "May I help?" he offered quietly. Delilah hesitated, then nodded. Owen knelt before her chair and gently lifted one foot, removing her shoe with careful hands. When he did the same for the other foot, he frowned at the sight of her ankles. "You're swelling," he observed, his thumb lightly pressing against the puffy skin. "Does it hurt?" "It aches," Delilah admitted. "Dr. Williams says it's normal but uncomfortable." Owen nodded thoughtfully. "My mother used to soak her feet when they troubled her. Would you like me to prepare a basin for you?" The offer was so unexpected and thoughtful that Delilah felt tears spring to her eyes. Pregnancy had made her emotions terribly unpredictable. "That would be wonderful," she managed. Owen heated water and added a handful of the dried lavender Delilah had hung in the kitchen. When the basin was ready, He placed it before her chair and helped her position her feet in the warm water. The relief was immediate and profound. "Better?" he asked, still kneeling beside her. "Much," she sighed. "Thank you." Instead of returning to his seat, Owen remained where he was, his hand moving to rest lightly on her ankle beneath the water. The touch was innocent enough, but Delilah felt her heart quicken. "Owen," she said softly, "may I ask you something personal?" He looked up, his expression open. "Of course. Are you content with our arrangement?" Truly, his brow furrowed. "I believe I've said as much." "Have I given you reason to doubt it?" Delilah shook her head. "Not doubt exactly, but we've never discussed certain aspects of marriage. Your continued insistence on sleeping on the sofa, for instance." A flush crept up Owen's neck. "I thought it best not to presume." "It's been over a month," Delilah pointed out gently. "And while I appreciate your consideration, I wonder if perhaps we might reconsider the arrangement." Owen's hand stilled on her ankle. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" Delilah's cheeks burned, but she pressed on. "I'm suggesting that a proper marriage bed is more comfortable than our sofa, and that we are, in fact, husband and wife." Owen's eyes darkened as he studied her face. "Delilah, I don't want you to feel obligated because of our arrangement. I meant what I said about not forcing attentions where they aren't welcomed." "And if they are welcomed?" she asked, barely above a whisper. The question hung between them, charged with possibility. Owen's hand tightened slightly on her ankle, his gaze never leaving hers. "Are they?" he asked, his voice rough with restrained emotion. Instead of answering with words, Delilah leaned forward and placed her hand against his cheek. The beard was softer than she'd expected. Owen remained perfectly still, as if afraid any movement might shatter the moment. "I didn't expect this," she confessed. "I thought our marriage would remain practical, distant even, but I find myself drawn to you, Owen, not out of obligation, but genuine feeling." Owen turned his face into her palm, pressing his lips against it in a gesture so tender it made her breath catch. "I've wanted you since the moment I saw you at the crossroads," he admitted. "Not in the way those other men might have, but wholly, completely. It took everything in me not to gather you into my arms that first night." The confession stunned Delilah. "Why didn't you say anything? How could I?" Owen asked. "You were vulnerable, desperate. You needed security, not a man imposing his desires on you, and you were grieving your husband." "I still miss James," Delilah acknowledged. "I think part of me always will, but that doesn't mean there isn't room for something new. Something different but equally real." Owen rose from his kneeling position, gently lifting her feet from the water and drying them with a nearby towel. His touch was reverential, almost worshipful, as he completed the task. When he finished, he remained before her, his eyes meeting hers with newfound certainty. "If we do this," he said carefully, "there's no going back to the way things were. I won't be able to maintain that distance." "I don't want distance," Delilah replied softly. "Not anymore." Owen stood and offered his hand. Delilah took it, allowing him to help her to her feet. Without further words, he led her to the bedroom that had, until now, been solely hers. At the threshold, he paused, giving her one final chance to reconsider. Delilah answered his unspoken question by drawing him into the room and closing the door behind them. Their first night together, as true husband and wife, was a revelation for them both. Owen's tenderness with her pregnant body, his patience and gentle exploration, awakened feelings in Delilah she had thought died with James. For Owen, the trust she placed in him was a precious gift he had never expected to receive. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the darkness, Owen's hand resting protectively over the swell of her belly, Delilah felt the baby kick against his palm. Owen's startled intake of breath was followed by a soft laugh of wonder. "That's quite a greeting," he murmured, his lips close to her ear. "He or she is usually active at night," Delilah explained, "as if determined to keep me awake. Already strong-willed," Owen observed, his thumb gently stroking her skin. Like the mother, Delilah turned her head to look at him. "Do you truly not mind raising another man's child?" Owen's expression grew serious in the moonlight filtering through the curtains. "Delilah, from the moment this child is born, it will be ours. Not just yours, not James's memory, ours." I will love it as my own because it is a part of you, and because it deserves nothing less than a father's full devotion." Tears welled in Delilah's eyes at his words. "How did I get so fortunate," she whispered, "to find you when I needed you most?" Owen brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "I think perhaps we found each other, exactly when we both needed it." As December settled over Placerville, bringing with it the festive spirit of the approaching Christmas season, Delilah and Owen's relationship continued to deepen. The physical intimacy they now shared had transformed their marriage from a practical arrangement into a genuine partnership. Owen had permanently moved into the bedroom, and Delilah found herself cherishing the simple pleasure of falling asleep in his arms each night. The town, which had initially regarded their hasty marriage with suspicion and gossip, began to accept them as a proper couple. Mrs. Donovan had become a true friend, often visiting to share advice on childbirth and infant care. Even Reverend Michaels had warmed considerably, stopping to inquire after Delilah's health when they attended Sunday services. One snowy evening, as they decorated their small home with pine boughs and red ribbons for Christmas, Owen broached a subject they had yet to discuss. "Have you thought about names for the baby?" he asked, hanging a paper star Delilah had crafted on the small pine tree they'd set up in the corner. Delilah paused in her arrangement of candles. "I've had some thoughts. If it's a girl, I was considering Elizabeth after my mother." Owen nodded approvingly. "Elizabeth Xavier has a fine sound to it, and if it's a boy," the question gave Delilah pause. She had privately been considering naming a son after James, but now wondered if that might hurt Owen. "I'm not certain," she hedged. "Do you have suggestions?" Owen seemed to sense her hesitation. "Delilah," he said gently, "if you wish to honor James, I would understand." His perception touched her deeply. "I had thought of it," she admitted, "but I wouldn't want to cause you pain." Owen moved to stand before her, taking her hands in his. "Listen to me. James was your husband, the father of this child. Honoring his memory doesn't diminish what we're building together." Delilah squeezed his hands gratefully. "Perhaps James as a middle name, and something new for his first." "I like that idea," Owen agreed. "How about William James Xavier?" "After your father and James." "William James," Delilah repeated, feeling the name settle right in her heart. "It's perfect." Owen's smile warmed her from within. "Then it's decided. Elizabeth or William awaits us." As they continued decorating, a knock came at the door. Owen answered it to find Mr. Donovan on the porch, snow dusting his heavy coat. "Evening, Xavier," the mine foreman greeted him. "Sorry to disturb you at home, but we've got trouble at the south shaft, collapse in the lower tunnel." Owen's expression immediately shifted to concern. "Anyone trapped?" "Not yet confirmed. We're gathering all available men to help with rescue and stabilization." Owen turned to Delilah, apology in his eyes. "I have to go." "Of course you do," she replied, already retrieving his heavy coat. "Be careful, please." He kissed her quickly. "I will." "Don't wait up, this could take hours." After he departed with Donovan, Delilah found herself unable to settle. The mines were notoriously dangerous, even for experienced men like Owen. A tunnel collapse could mean cave-ins, poisonous gas, or worse. James had often spoken of the risks, though he'd worked smaller claims rather than the large operations like Empire. Unable to focus on her sewing or reading, Delilah paced the small house, one hand supporting her lower back, the other resting protectively on her belly. The baby seemed to sense her agitation, moving restlessly within her. "Your father will be fine," she murmured, then caught herself. She had referred to Owen as the baby's father without even thinking about it. The realization stopped her pacing. Somewhere along the way, their practical arrangement had transformed into something so real that she now naturally thought of Owen as her child's father. Hours passed with excruciating slowness. Midnight came and went. Delilah kept the fire burning and water heated, knowing Owen would be cold and exhausted when he returned. By 3 in the morning, her anxiety had grown nearly unbearable. The wind had picked up, driving the snow against the windows in icy sheets. The temperature had dropped dramatically, making her fear not just for those potentially trapped in the mine, but for the rescuers working in the bitter cold. Just as she was considering bundling up to walk to the Donovan's house for news, the front door opened. Owen stumbled in, covered in coal dust and grime, his expression haggard. "Owen," Delilah cried, rushing to him as quickly as her condition allowed. "Thank God you're safe." He accepted her embrace, his body trembling with exhaustion and cold. "We got them out," he said, his voice hoarse. "All 4 men trapped, one with a broken leg but all alive." "Sit down before you fall down," Delilah ordered, guiding him to a chair. She helped remove his frozen boots and sodden coat, then wrapped a warm blanket around his shoulders. "I'll heat more water for washing, and there's stew keeping warm." Owen caught her hand as she turned away. "Delilah," he said, his eyes serious despite his fatigue. "One of the men we pulled out was Billy Thompson." The name hit Delilah like a physical blow. Billy Thompson had been James's closest friend and partner in his mining ventures. They had grown up together in Pennsylvania before heading west to seek their fortunes. After James's death, Billy had disappeared from Placerville, presumably to try his luck elsewhere. "Billy's here." "Working at Empire?" she asked, stunned. Owen nodded. "Apparently started about 2 weeks ago, different shift from mine, so our paths never crossed." He hesitated. "He was asking for you once he learned my name." Delilah sank into the chair opposite Owen. "What did you tell him, the truth?" "That we're married, expecting a child." Owen studied her face carefully. He seemed shocked, as you might imagine. "I'm sure he was," Delilah murmured. Billy had been present at her wedding to James, had dined at their table countless times. The idea of facing him now, as Owen's wife carrying James's child, filled her with complicated emotions. "He wants to call on you tomorrow," Owen continued. "I told him you'd been unwell with the pregnancy, that he should wait until you felt up to visitors. I hope that was right." Delilah reached across the table to take Owen's grimy hand. "It was perfect. Thank you for being considerate." She squeezed his fingers. "But I should see him. James would want that." Owen nodded, lifting her hand to his lips. "Whatever you wish. Now I believe you mentioned stew." The normalcy of sharing a meal in the pre-dawn hours, discussing the rescue operation between bites, helped settle Delilah's churning thoughts. By the time they finally retired to bed, the sun was rising, casting pink light across the fresh snow. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked as they lay together, his arm around her shoulders. "That life has a strange way of circling back," Delilah replied honestly. "Just when I thought I'd put the past behind me, it returns in unexpected ways." Owen was quiet for a moment. "Does it trouble you?" "This reminder of your life with James." Delilah turned to study his face. "No," she said firmly. "It's strange but not troubling. My life with James was one chapter. This us is another. Both are real. Both matter." Relief softened Owen's features. "You're remarkable, you know that." "Most women wouldn't approach this situation with such clarity." "Most women haven't had the privilege of 2 good men in their lives," Delilah replied, settling against his chest. "Now sleep. You've earned it." Billy Thompson arrived the following afternoon, hat in hand, his weathered face a mixture of curiosity and apprehension as Owen opened the door to admit him. Delilah waited in the parlor, her hands folded over her prominent belly, heart racing despite her outward calm. "Delilah," Billy greeted her, his voice thick with emotion. "You're a sight for sore eyes." "Hello, Billy," she replied, offering her cheek for his kiss. "It's been a long while." Billy's eyes dropped to her stomach, then flicked to Owen, who had positioned himself protectively near Delilah's chair. "I see congratulations are in order." The awkward tension in the room was palpable. Owen cleared his throat. "I'll prepare some coffee," he said, touching Delilah's shoulder briefly before retreating to the kitchen area, giving them some privacy while remaining within earshot. Once he'd gone, Billy leaned forward. "Delilah, what's happening here?" he whispered urgently. "Last I heard, you were widowed and struggling. Now you're married to a mine foreman and expecting." Delilah met his gaze steadily. "Life changed quickly, Billy. After you left town, things became difficult. So difficult you married a stranger." Billy's voice held no judgment, only concern. "Is he good to you at least?" "Owen is a fine man and a wonderful husband," Delilah answered firmly. "Our circumstances may be unusual, but our marriage is genuine." Billy studied her face, seeming to search for signs of distress or coercion. Finding none, he relaxed slightly. "James would want you taken care of," he conceded. "Still, it's a shock." For me as well at times, Delilah admitted with a small smile. But life rarely follows the path we expect, does it? What have you, Billy? Where have you been these past months? Billy explained that he'd traveled to Nevada, trying various mining operations before hearing that Empire was hiring experienced men at good wages. Never thought I'd end up back in Placerville, he said. Seems we both came full circle. Their conversation continued more easily after that initial awkwardness. Billy shared stories of his travels, asked about mutual acquaintances in town, and eventually turned to more personal matters. The baby, he said hesitantly. It's James's, isn't it? The timing. Yes, Delilah confirmed. James never knew. I discovered my condition after he passed. Billy nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. He would have been over the moon, always wanted children, did James. I know, Delilah said softly, her own eyes filling with tears. If it's a boy, his middle name will be James. From the kitchen, Owen returned with coffee and a plate of Delilah's fresh-baked cookies. His expression was carefully neutral, but Delilah could read the tension in his shoulders. You're a lucky man, Xavier, Billy said, accepting a cup. Delilah's the finest woman in these parts. I'm well aware, Owen replied, his hand coming to rest on Delilah's shoulder. The simple gesture spoke volumes, not possessive, but protective, loving. We both count ourselves fortunate. Something in Owen's tone or touch must have reassured Billy because his posture relaxed. Well then, he said, raising his cup in a small toast, to good fortune all around. After Billy departed, promising to visit again soon, Owen helped Delilah to the sofa where they sat in contemplative silence. Thank you, Delilah finally said, for giving us that time to talk. For understanding how important it was, Owen shrugged. He was James's friend, that makes him important to you and to this child. He placed his hand on her belly. Besides, I have nothing to fear from the past, Delilah, not when our present is so solid. His confidence warmed her. Our present is solid, she agreed, leaning against his shoulder. And our future, even more so. As Christmas approached, the baby's movements grew stronger, sometimes visible through Delilah's dresses as a foot or elbow pressed outward. Owen took particular delight in these moments, often placing his hand on her belly to feel the child's acrobatics. His genuine enthusiasm for impending fatherhood touched Delilah deeply. On Christmas Eve, a heavy snowfall blanketed Placerville, transforming the mining town into a postcard vision of winter beauty. Owen had surprised Delilah with a small carved nativity scene, each figure lovingly detailed during his evening hours. Delilah, in turn, had secretly knitted him a warm scarf in rich blue wool. They exchanged these gifts after attending the candlelight service at the church, where Reverend Michaels had nodded approvingly at Delilah's condition and Owen's attentive care. The town had fully embraced them as a proper couple, the initial gossip long since replaced by acceptance. As they prepared for bed that night, Delilah felt a sharp, unexpected pain low in her abdomen. She gasped, clutching the bedpost for support. Owen was at her side instantly. What is it? The baby, I'm not sure, Delilah admitted as the pain subsided. Just a twinge, probably nothing to worry about. Owen frowned. You're not due for another month. Babies come when they decide to, Delilah reminded him, though privately she shared his concern. Let's get some rest. If it happens again, we'll send for Dr. Williams. They settled into bed, but Delilah found sleep elusive. Occasional twinges kept her alert, though none were as sharp as the first. Owen remained awake beside her, his concern evident in the tension of his body. Tell me about your family farm, Delilah requested, seeking distraction. You rarely speak of your childhood. Owen shifted to face her in the darkness. Not much to tell, small place in Ohio. My father worked the land, my mother kept house and tended the garden. 2 sisters, both married now with families of their own. Do you write to them? Occasionally. They know about you. His hand found hers beneath the covers. I told them how fortunate I was to find you. What did they say? Owen chuckled softly. My mother wrote back suggesting we visit in the spring. She's eager to meet her new daughter-in-law and grandchild. The idea of meeting Owen's family sent a flutter of nervousness through Delilah, followed by a sharper pain that made her inhale sharply. Another one. Owen asked, immediately alert. Yes, but it's Delilah stopped as she felt a warm gush of liquid between her thighs. Owen, she said, her voice tight with sudden fear. My waters have broken. Owen was out of bed in an instant, lighting the lamp. I'll fetch Dr. Williams. Wait, Delilah called, another pain gripping her. It's too early. The baby isn't due yet. All the more reason to get the doctor, Owen replied, already pulling on his clothes. I'll be back as quickly as possible. Try to stay calm. After Owen rushed out into the snowy night, Delilah forced herself to breathe deeply, fighting rising panic. First babies often came late, rarely early. Something wasn't right. The pains were intensifying rapidly, coming closer together than she'd expected based on Mrs. Donovan's descriptions of childbirth. She managed to change into a clean nightgown and arrange towels on the bed before another contraction doubled her over. By the time Owen returned with Dr. Williams 20 minutes later, Delilah was pacing the bedroom, one hand braced against the wall for support. Mrs. Xavier, the doctor, greeted her, setting down his bag. Let's see what's happening here. After a brief examination, Dr. Williams's expression turned serious. The baby's coming faster than I'd expect for a first birth, he told them. And it's presenting breech feet first instead of head. Fear clutched at Delilah's heart. She'd heard stories of difficult breech births, of mothers and babies lost. Can you turn it? Owen asked, his face pale but composed. Not at this stage, the doctor replied. We'll have to deliver as is. It will be more difficult but not impossible. He turned to Delilah. You'll need to be very brave, Mrs. Xavier. Follow my instructions exactly. What followed was the most challenging ordeal of Delilah's life. The pain was beyond anything she had imagined, tearing through her body in waves that left her gasping and weak. Owen remained by her side throughout, supporting her back, wiping her brow, murmuring encouragement even as fear shadowed his eyes. Push now, Mrs. Xavier, Dr. Williams ordered after what seemed an eternity. The feet are through. We need the body to follow quickly. Delilah gathered her remaining strength, bearing down with all her might. The pressure was immense, the pain blinding. Again, the doctor commanded. The shoulders are the hardest part. Push. With a final, desperate effort, Delilah felt the baby slide from her body. The relief was immediate and overwhelming, but no cry followed. The room fell into terrifying silence. Why isn't the baby crying? She demanded, trying to sit up. Owen, why is it so quiet? Dr. Williams was working swiftly, his back to them as he manipulated the tiny form. Owen's hand tightened around Delilah's, his face a mask of contained fear. Then, suddenly, a thin wail filled the room. The sound was the most beautiful thing Delilah had ever heard. Tears streamed down her face as Dr. Williams turned, a small, reddish bundle in his arms. A boy, he announced, placing the infant on Delilah's chest. Small, but his lungs seemed strong. The baby's face was wrinkled and red, his head covered with dark, damp hair. He continued to cry, tiny fists waving in protest at his abrupt entry into the cold world. Delilah touched his cheek with a trembling finger, awestruck by the perfect miniature person she and James had created. William James Xavier, she whispered, looking up at Owen through tears of joy and exhaustion. Our son. Owen's expression transformed from fear to wonder as he gazed at the child. He's perfect, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Perfect and strong like his mother. Dr. Williams cleared his throat. He's early, so we'll need to take special care. Keep him warm, feed him often. But I believe he'll thrive. After the doctor had tended to Delilah and provided instructions for the baby's care, Owen saw him to the door with profuse thanks. When he returned to the bedroom, Delilah was studying their son's tiny features with rapt attention. He has James's chin, she observed softly, but I think my eyes. Owen sat carefully on the edge of the bed. May I hold him? Delilah gently transferred the swaddled infant to Owen's arms. The sight of this strong man cradling the tiny baby with such tender care made her heart swell with love for them both. Hello, William, Owen said, his voice softer than Delilah had ever heard it. I'm your father, not by blood perhaps, but by choice and by love. He looked up at Delilah. I will protect him with my life, I swear it. I know you will, she replied, reaching out to touch his cheek. You already saved us both, long before tonight. The first weeks of William's life passed in a blur of exhaustion and joy. The baby was indeed small but proved remarkably resilient. Delilah recovered quickly from the birth, driven by the constant demands of caring for a newborn. Owen arranged to take 2 weeks away from the mine, using saved wages and the goodwill he'd earned during the tunnel collapse rescue. Their days fell into a new rhythm centered around William's needs. Owen proved himself an enthusiastic, if sometimes awkward, father. He handled diaper changes with the same focused determination he brought to mining operations, and spent hours simply watching William sleep, as if memorizing every detail of the tiny face. By February, life had settled into a more manageable pattern. William was gaining weight steadily, his cheeks filling out, his eyes beginning to focus on the world around him. Owen had returned to work but hurried home each evening, eager to spend time with his family. One evening, as Delilah nursed William in the rocking chair, Owen entered with the day's mail. "Letter for you," he said, handing her an envelope. From Ohio. Delilah recognized his mother's handwriting from previous correspondence. "Would you read it to me? My hands are occupied." Owen opened the letter and began reading aloud. His mother's words were warm and welcoming, expressing eagerness to meet her new grandson and daughter-in-law. The letter concluded with an invitation to visit in the summer, when William would be old enough to travel safely. "What do you think?" Owen asked when he finished reading. "Would you like to meet my family?" Delilah considered the question carefully. "I would," she decided. "William should know his grandparents and aunts." Owen smiled, clearly pleased by her answer. "I'll write back tomorrow. They'll be thrilled." As he set the letter aside, his expression grew more serious. "Delilah, there's something I've been meaning to ask you." "Yes," she prompted when he hesitated. "Are you happy with me, with this life we've built?" The question surprised her. "Of course I am. Why would you doubt it?" Owen ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of nervousness. "Sometimes I wonder if you ever regret accepting my proposal, if you ever wish things had turned out differently." Delilah gazed down at William, now drowsing at her breast, then back at Owen. "Let me tell you what I know," she said softly. 6 months ago, I stood at a crossroads, desperate and alone. I was prepared to sell myself to feed my unborn child. Instead, I found a man who offered me not just a meal, but a home, a name, a future. She reached for Owen's hand, drawing him closer. "Do I wish James hadn't died? Of course. But do I regret the path that brought me to you? Never. You've given me more than survival, Owen. You've given me love, not just yours for me, but mine for you." Owen's eyes widened at her explicit declaration. They had spoken of affection, of caring, but neither had voiced the deeper emotion growing between them. "You love me?" he asked, his voice rough. "With all my heart," Delilah confirmed. "How could I not?" Owen knelt beside the rocking chair, his hand gentle on William's downy head, his eyes never leaving Delilah's. "I've loved you since that first night," he confessed. "When you accepted that second bowl of stew with such dignity despite your hunger. I knew then that you were the strongest, most remarkable woman I'd ever met." Delilah leaned forward, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby, and pressed her lips to Owen's. The kiss was sweet and lingering, a seal on the truth they had finally voiced. "I never expected this," she murmured against his mouth. "To find love twice in one lifetime seems like more good fortune than any person deserves." "Perhaps," Owen agreed, drawing back to gaze at her with tender eyes, "or perhaps it's exactly what you deserve." As spring transformed Placerville from winter white to vibrant green, the Xavier household flourished along with the season. William grew rapidly, his personality emerging with each passing week, curious, determined, quick to smile. Owen took immense pride in his son's developments, announcing each new achievement as if William were the first baby ever to grasp a finger or roll from back to front. The town had fully embraced them as a family. When they walked together on Sunday afternoons, William bundled in a handsome carriage Owen had purchased with his promotion bonus. People greeted them warmly. Even those who had once whispered about their hasty marriage now commented on what a fine family they made. In early June, as they prepared for their journey to Ohio, Owen arrived home with unexpected news. Empire is opening a new operation near Sacramento. he announced over supper. "They've offered me the position of head foreman, overseeing all shifts." Delilah looked up from feeding William strained pears. "That's wonderful, a significant promotion." "It would mean moving," Owen cautioned, "leaving Placerville." Delilah considered this. Placerville held mixed memories for her: the happiness of her early days with James, the desperation of her widowhood, the unexpected joy of her life with Owen. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "Honestly," Owen set down his fork, "I've been thinking it might be good to make a fresh start. Somewhere new where we're just the Xaviers, not the hasty marriage that caused a scandal." His perception surprised her. She had thought the town's gossip no longer bothered him. "Does it still trouble you, what people said?" Owen shrugged. "Not for myself, but William will grow up here. Children can be cruel. I don't want him facing questions or taunts about his parentage." Delilah nodded slowly. "You're right, a fresh start might be best for all of us." She smiled at him across the table. "Besides, I've followed you this far. What's another 100 miles? Relief and gratitude crossed Owen's face. "I'll tell Donovan I accept then. We could move after returning from Ohio." "A summer of changes," Delilah mused, wiping William's messy chin. "How appropriate for our unconventional family." Their journey to Ohio proved less arduous than expected. William was a surprisingly good traveler, content to observe the changing landscapes from the safety of his mother's arms. The train journey fascinated him, his dark eyes widening at the rush of new sights and sounds. Owen's family welcomed them with open arms and minimal questions. His mother, a practical woman with Owen's same amber eyes, took one look at William and declared him the spitting image of Owen as a baby, a polite fiction that touched Delilah deeply. His sisters fussed over the infant, competing for chances to hold him, while his father quietly showed Owen the improvements to the farm. One evening during their visit, as Delilah sat on the porch swing watching Owen demonstrate horseshoe tossing to his nephews, his mother joined her. "He's different with you," the older woman observed, her gaze on her son. "Settled, at peace." "We've been good for each other," Delilah replied simply. Mrs. Xavier nodded. "When he wrote about meeting you, I worried. It seemed so sudden, so unlike my cautious son." She patted Delilah's hand. "Now I see he knew exactly what he was doing. You belong together, the three of you." "Even though William isn't," Delilah began, then stopped herself. "Blood doesn't make a family child," Mrs. Xavier said firmly. "Love does, and anyone with eyes can see Owen loves that boy as his own." "He does," Delilah agreed, watching as Owen swung one of his nephews into the air, the child's laughter ringing across the farmyard. "He'll be a wonderful father to all our children." Mrs. Xavier's eyes twinkled. "Planning more already," Delilah blushed. "Perhaps someday." "Well, don't wait too long," the older woman advised. "Siblings close in age are the best companions." By the time they departed for California, Delilah felt truly integrated into Owen's family. The acceptance they'd shown her and William had strengthened her conviction that their move to Sacramento was the right decision. A fresh start in a new place, with the solid foundation they'd built together. The new mining operation was located outside Sacramento, in a growing community that welcomed the influx of workers and their families. The company provided Owen with a comfortable house, larger than their Placerville home, with a garden for Delilah and a spacious yard for William to explore as he grew. Their new neighbors knew them only as Foreman Xavier, his wife, and their son. No one questioned William's parentage or the circumstances of their marriage. They were accepted as they presented themselves a young family making their way in the world. Owen thrived in his new position, his natural leadership abilities earning him respect from the men under his supervision. His fair treatment of workers and emphasis on safety measures made the operation more profitable than projected, further cementing his value to the company. Delilah, too, found her place in their new community. With William growing more independent, she began teaching reading to minors' children 2 afternoons a week. The work was fulfilling, using skills from her own education while contributing to their household income. On their first anniversary, Owen surprised Delilah with a small velvet box. "What's this?" she asked, accepting the gift across their dinner table after William had been put to bed. "Open it and see," Owen replied, watching her expectantly. Inside lay a gold ring with a small but brilliant diamond, far more elaborate than her simple wedding band. "Owen, it's beautiful," she breathed. "But what's the occasion?" "I never gave you a proper engagement ring," he explained. "We moved rather quickly from proposition to wedding." Delilah laughed. "That we did. Consider this my way of asking properly a year late." Owen took the ring from the box and held it poised before her finger. "Delilah Mason, Xavier, will you continue to be my wife, not out of necessity or convenience, but because we've found something neither of us expected?" Tears welled in Delilah's eyes at the gesture. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. As he slid the ring onto her finger alongside her wedding band, Owen added, "There's one more thing, a question really." "What is it?" Delilah asked, admiring the sparkle of the diamond in the lamplight. "How would you feel about giving William a brother or sister?" Delilah's eyes widened. "Are you saying you want to try for another child?" Owen nodded. "William is walking now, beginning to talk. It seems a good time if you're willing." Delilah rose from her chair and moved around the table to sit in Owen's lap, her arms twining around his neck. "I think it's a wonderful idea," she murmured against his lips. "In fact, I've been hoping you might suggest it." Owen's arms tightened around her waist. "Have you now? Indeed." She kissed him deeply, then drew back with a mischievous smile. "Perhaps we should begin our efforts immediately." William's sound asleep. Owen's laugh was low and warm against her neck as he stood, lifting her in his arms. "Mrs. Xavier, I believe that's the best suggestion I've heard all day." 3 months later, as autumn painted the Sierra foothills in gold and crimson, Delilah confirmed what she had begun to suspect: she was expecting their second child. William, now nearly 18 months old and thoroughly devoted to his father, seemed to sense the coming change, becoming more affectionate with his mother. Owen's reaction to the news was everything Delilah could have hoped for. His joy was boundless, his concern for her health immediate and thorough. He insisted on hiring help for the heavier household chores and reduced her teaching schedule to a single afternoon. "You're coddling me," Delilah protested one evening as he insisted on brewing her special tea. "I managed just fine with William." "You nearly died bringing William into the world," Owen reminded her, his expression serious. "This time will be different. You'll have proper care from the beginning." Delilah softened at the fear still evident in his eyes. "Very well. But don't treat me as if I might break. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "Not my babies," Owen replied, handing her the steaming cup. "Not my wife." As her pregnancy progressed, Delilah found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this point. From desperate widow to beloved wife, from a woman prepared to sell herself for survival to the mother of a thriving son with another child on the way, the transformation seemed almost miraculous. One Sunday afternoon, as she sat watching Owen teach William to stack wooden blocks, Delilah felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. 2 years ago, she had stood at a crossroads, offering the only thing she had left to give. Instead of taking what she offered, Owen had given her his name, his protection, and eventually his heart. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "You're miles away." Delilah smiled, one hand resting on her growing belly, the other reaching out to touch his cheek. "I was thinking about Crossroads, about the night we met." Understanding dawned in Owen's eyes. "Ah, that night. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd taken a different route into Placerville? If we'd never met at that particular moment?" Owen considered the question seriously. "I believe we would have found each other somehow. Perhaps not in the same way, but I can't imagine a world where you and I don't end up here together." William toddled over, offering his mother a wooden block with solemn ceremony. Delilah accepted it with equal gravity, then pulled her son onto her lap, breathing in the sweet scent of his hair. "You know," she said to Owen, "I once thought that night at the crossroads was the lowest point of my life. Now I see it was actually the beginning of something wonderful." Owen moved to sit beside her, his arm encircling her shoulders as William nestled between them. "For me as well," he agreed. "Though I have to admit, your first impression of me wasn't entirely accurate." "How so?" "You thought I was offering charity," Owen reminded her. But the truth is, you gave me far more than I gave you." His hand covered hers where it rested on their son's head. "You gave me a family, Delilah. A purpose, a home. And you gave me your name," she replied softly, "when it was the only thing that could save me." "The best decision I ever made," Owen declared, kissing her temple. As William squirmed to return to his blocks, and the new life within her offered a gentle kick, Delilah knew with absolute certainty that it had been the best decision for her as well. From desperation at the crossroads had come a journey neither of them could have anticipated, but one that had brought them to exactly where they were meant to be together, with a past honored but not binding, and a future bright with promise.